Thank you. We're now at participant number 1.
Anybody recording the audio?
Okay. You ready? Yeah. Okay. Page test, just above the middle of the page. Line starts with the word shemasig be'etzem ha'inyan. We're discussing in general the principle of Yila v'olu. And the Rebbe says on the onset, there are two models of Ila v'Yolu. One is when the Olu is initially contained within the Ila, and then it comes forth as an Olu, as an entity unto itself. The motion for that is Seichel and Midas. Midas are quite different than Seichel, as we discussed before, and yet the Midas are contained within the Seichel. And it is called Midas Sheb Seichel. What is the difference between these Midas and Midas as they are unto themselves? In principle is that because they are still in the Seichel, so the Midas, the Hispoilus, Midas means the Hispoilus, that which is the personal effect. Hispoilus is from the impact and the greatness of the inyan that he recognizes. Normal midas is that which how it affects him, but this is midas sheb seichel. Seichel is overwhelmingly affected by the quality of what he understands. That remains even in the midas, but there is inyan from his points. And here is where we are kind of treating on a very fine line. It is midos and yet it's seichel. On one hand, it's seichel because it is focused on the greatness of the inyan that he's mispoiled. Nonetheless, the whole inyan of mispoilus is a inyan of midos. That's what's called midas sheb seichel. It's a qualified element of midas. It's a midas which is still heavily affected by the fact that there is seichel in its support, in its background.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Huh?
I just want to make sure I understand. We associate ila, which is cause, to seichel, and elu to effect, which is midas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I said we are on the line that begins with the word shemasig be'etzem ha'inyan. That's just above the exact middle of the place. We go straight in these parentheses. Im hayois, although she'eino ikmei shehu beis ha'asoga mamash. But this is alluding to the principle that we said just a moment before, that nonetheless, even though it's midos, there is still the phenomenal effect, the principal effect of the seichel, of the hasoga. And hasoga is the etzem ha'inyan. And therefore hasoga is an overwhelming power in that model, in that situation. Nonetheless, there is still the midas. There's his poilus. Thank you very much. His poilus means that you have something other than the inyan of which you are invest into. There's a personal effect, even though the focus is not on the personal effect. But nonetheless, the fact that it is spoilers is already not pure seichel. It's already this is from midos, which is called midos shebeseichel. Midos, whose environment is seichel. Is moich. There's much to speak about this, but just since I find it in this. The moichin are the environment providing for the midas. And therefore the orientation of this midas is, what is the reality? The moichin. But the moichin provide for the midas to have a say, to have a voice, so to speak. The spoilers, and therefore this is in from midas. Midas shebemech, under the auspices of midas, under the auspices of mech.
The nature of moichin seems to be that it'll look at the subject dispassionately, without personal element.
Right.
So how are we coming to say some degree of personal effect? What are we looking at there?
Oh, so we explained. It's not from the perspective of a person. That's why he explained that even though this is moichin, everything has in it a complete complement of real existence. Because after all, I hope that after all, this is not something that developed on its own. It was created by the Creator. The Rebbe does not create half-masked things. If it is moichin, it has a real presence. It's a presence of the level of moichin. Therefore, inherent in that is the inyan that it has the effect in the place where it's effective, but it's effective. That's in the moichin that it has an effect in the moichin. It's not completely dispassionate because it's a real presence. The moichin becomes a real presence, even though it's focused on the moichin element. We know from history, from experience, hopefully not personal experience, but certainly the experience of history. The Germans who set it up that they are focusing totally on the pure information, pure investigation. Rationale. They had to work on themselves to do that. And when they graduate and they say, oh, they reached the pinnacle, that this was when they intentionally got rid of every other aspect of the living aspect. They became so dispassionate, so lifeless, that were able to do what they did. With such a dry planning format. It's not human. They have intentionally thrown out the human element that the Rebbe gave them, even though they're goy, but still they're human. I read the other day that the mayor of the town where much of the cremation was taking place, nobody was allowed to venture into there. He didn't know what was happening just outside of his town. There was smoke coming up. He had no idea what was going on. After the war, when he found out what was happening, he went and he hung himself. He hung himself. This happened under his own nose, within the vicinity of his own authority, responsibility. He went and hung himself. This is a German going. So this is inherent in Menachem. You never knew this. Okay. Okay, so at the end of that line, that begins shemasig better AYIN. There is still the different hasog, and at the end of that we AYIN, and for this reason, because it's a, so to speak, a qualified hasog, which allows for midas. Zehu rak, it is only midas shebemeichin. Meaning to say, it is midas shebemeichin, it is not midas per se. The environment is meichin. This is, just want to emphasize the principle. This is a klal, so to speak, a rule in human experience. If you become very greatly involved in doing something, a midas element, you're doing somebody a favor. It's a pure midas element, you don't have to justify it. Nonetheless, in the background of your mind is not only that he is benefited, that it's a good thing, but it's justified, it's the right thing to do. In the background of the midas, there is union that this is the right thing to do. Because the background and the support, the environment of a midas, the original environment of midas is in Menachem. A person cannot do something just because he feels so without justifying it and being Menachem that yet it's the right thing. Even though he doesn't have to debate it with himself, but it's because the midas are rooted in, originally rooted in Menachem. That's why this is rak midas shebemeichin. It is only midas shebemeichin. In other words, the Menachem element in this is only the midas element, and the midas element is only because it is the Menachem. The kol mokim, and yet still, the kol mokim. Either way, even though we said that this is kind of a qualified union of midas, harei ze mokim lemidas shebelev. This is the source for midas that ultimately reveal themselves and function in the heart. The heart does not have the union of Menachem altogether. The heart takes only that which is affected by. Ki, because the hispoil is the excitement that takes place in his Menachem, in his moyach. There's a sense, and he senses it's hispoilus. It is not a hispoilus as subtle hispoilus in the totally bottle contained in the Menachem element. It is felt as a presence, as a midas element. Al-Koponim. What means Al-Koponim? Al-Koponim means even if you're qualified, it says that's not real midas, still there is an element akin to midas. Rakshu bedakus. Except that the murgosh, the hergish is bedakus, is in a very subtle and fine manner. It is not an element that has a direct effect on him. In the background, he has that murgosh. Umimeno, and from this subtle hergish in the Menachem, bo bechinas hamurgosh belev. From this comes forth later the element, the aspect of the murgash of the Shabbat, the sensitivity in the heart, Behispoilus murgeshes the midas. In a form of Hispoilus murgeshes, in a full-fledged and expressed Hispoilus in the form of midas. What is midas? Midas means, how does this affect this particular element? Is this good or it's not good? It's a completely different aspect than the Meichen.
What means before Masha Maspuba Moicha Haraize Bemirgash al Kapun? What does it mean there, Bemirgash?
Because we said that this is Moichin, this is not Midas, but we said that even though it's Moichin, there is nonetheless, at the Moichin level, this is the Inyan for Hergish.
What means Hergish there?
Excuse me?
What does mean Hergish there?
Okay. Hergish means, I don't need to explain why I'm doing having it. I feel that way. This is Hergish. This is the element of midas.
Like a sense?
What?
Like a sense? Like saying like a sense?
A sense. A sense could be an intellectual sense. He feels an element that is not based on any kind of right and wrong or true and false. A presence. It's there. Das means b'murgash. And this is midas shebemoichin. Even though the overwhelming presence is the moichin, nonetheless there is also the element that it affects him. But it's midas shebemoichin. What?
They're saying right and wrong and good and bad. Are right and wrong and good and bad sensed by Moichan or Midas?
Normally, we'd say good and bad is midas, right and wrong is Moichan. But you can readily see how one is related to the other. So the Rebbe emphasizes this. Murgash al kol pon. Even though it's a qualified hergish, very subtle, nonetheless it's murgash al kol ponim. It is in the realm of hergish, not in the realm of identifying truth, but to have a personal feel for it. That's already a name from midas, no matter how subtle it is. Okay, so let's continue. So we're on the next line. V'gam inyan hahergish behatoiv shebehoinyan. The principle of the hergish behatoiv shebehoinyan, the sensing and feeling the goodness of the inyan, which is basically a inyan of moichin. The goodness is inyan moichin. In this case, the word goodness does not mean how it affects the person, but the goodness It's absolute goodness, so to speak. Even the Hergesh in Hatoiv Shebehoinyan, Harei Ze Mokoir. This ultimately presents a mokoir as a source, Shemimenu Bo HaHergesh, from which ultimately comes the sense, Eich Shehadover Toiv Loi. How this union is good for him. This Inyan, the Rebbe over here is going through various stages. He says that when there is a hergesh, and this is a good thing, this is already a source for midas. In the hergesh behatoiv shebehoinyan, the hergesh, the principle of the hergesh behatoiv shebehoinyan, the goodness of the inyan, harei mokir, this serves as a mokir shemimenu bo hahergesh, from which comes a sense eich shehadover toiv loy. Ultimately, this translates how the inyan is toiv loy, is good for him. In other words, this is not the pure moichin. This is already a development within moichin itself. Because in moichin be'etzem, in the essence of moichin itself, while he is torud, overtaken, and he is engaged in trying to comprehend the inyan, then he is not shayach at all. Notice, to the sense that this is a good inyan. This is not this at that moment. He's not sensing that element at all. He's involved in hasogas inyan and sending the inyan itself. I'll have to go back to this in a moment. V'kasher nichnas u'miskasher b'oy megoynim b'yoyse. When he enters, u'miskasher, and he connects, b'oy megoynim, in the depth of this union, b'yoyse, excessively, he becomes, so to speak, one with the union itself. He is no longer one who stands outside and understands an inyan, but he connects to the inyan itself totally. Ubiprat, particularly, this is a parenthetical thing which we'll have to go with. Biprat particularly kasher hasogon he, when the comprehension is be'etzem ho'inyan holiki, when his focus is to understand the essence of the inyan holiki, is not its presence in the world, but in the essence of the inyan laki, the lakus of the inyan. He wants to understand the etzem inyan laki. Ba memela automatically comes forth b'chinas hayoker v'hoyilu de lakus. Surfaces automatically the aspect hayoker, the dearness and the phenomenal quality of the hoyil, and the supremacy of a lakus. Elokus, if I should try to put these few phrases over here in some kind of a perspective. Elokus, from our perspective, you should try to understand Elokus. It's full of contradictions, the way we understand it. On the one hand, it's a non-entity. It's total AYIN. The best way for us to kind of describe and translate this word total AYIN is ratzon. Ratzon, the will, is not an experience. Neither is it some kind of a logical formulation. It's an expression of the reality of the person. As long as a person is alive, he has a will to live. And the will is not an expression of fear lest I lose it. I have to stay connected. There is not a logical element in there. The will is an expression of the reality of life itself. It's a functional element of life. Define life in any form of definition, you say will. There is no translation to that. Will is the chitzonius of life, the functional element of life. Now, this will, is it a functional element or is it an essential element? On the one hand, it's a functional element because it expresses itself. On the other hand, it's an automatic expression. It's completely representing of life itself. Not of a secondary step. This is what life is. But on the chitzonius of it. How life is to be identified from outside. But it is life. Life is not meant to be identified from outside. Life is a true thing unto itself. But because of its phenomenal truth, you can see it also from outside. But this will, normally in our terminology, if you want something, you ask me, what do you want? Why do you want it? There is no such thing. The whole question doesn't apply. This is me.
You're saying ratzon is like elokus, or is the same as, or we're going to now say something about elokus?
And it's like elokus. The reason there is such an entity called the ratzon, the whole phenomenon of ratzon, is the fact that there is a fundamental truth in the nefesh, which is not something which develops over a time, as a result of some experience. It's a godly spark that was given to the person to live with. And it is Godliness itself that lives within him. It's not even his experience. This is what he says over here. So when he enters deeper and he connects in the depth of the union that he understands, particularly if his focus is in Etzim, focus Elokus as such, then comes with the Chemela, surfaces automatically Hayoker v'Hoyilu the Elokus. The Yoker, the dearness and illness and supremacy of Elokus. Why is there the Hayoker and Yilu Elokus if you're talking about an Etzem? Come on. Shame on you. Because that we are at this moment focusing to see and to recognize the Elokus. It is not the presence of Elokus itself, it is our understanding and knowledge of it. Thus, the Yoker, the phenomenal quality of it, phenomenal value of it begins to surface. Because I'm coming to it from, as an outsider, I'm coming to it from not having it. So when you realize what there is, and as an outsider, you see, you spoil what kind of thing this is.
Was the last point, when you come from not having, you see what is?
How phenomenally dear it is, how supreme it is.
What's it?
The Elokus. If we should try to fit into our seichel that which is higher than seichel, like a Elokus, there will automatically be the overwhelming effect of it. Now this is way superior to the means of which you know it. You know it and you don't know it. Okay, this is the, so to speak, the process. When the Yoker and Yilu Elokus, when the phenomenal greatness of Elokus surfaces, this is the beginning of Midas. Because this is not the pure knowledge of it itself. This is its effect in your environment. This is the beginning of Midas. But it's still within the mind. Alright? I think this is it, right? This is it for this morning. Have a great day.